feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Monday morning. It's April 7th. And coming up on today's show, we'll have Jace join us. And the plan is to talk about a few things. I think we're going to start by talking about Gobert's dominance of late. He had 23 and 19 on 10 of 11 shooting against Philly on Saturday night. Gobert is averaging 19 points and 17 rebounds per game over his last 6 games. I think 6 of those rebounds per game have been offensive rebounds. We'll also talk about Ant's big shot at the end of that Philly game and just where this Wolves late game offense is sort of in general as they head into the playoffs. So I'm feeling like how Randle and Edwards play off of each other has become sort of increasingly important as Ant has been getting more and more attention late in games. So, but also in general, right? Like this whole Randle and Edwards need to play off of each other. We're going to get into some of that and how the Wolves, that feels like it's a couple degrees off, but is maybe able to be clicked back into for this team. Then we're going to do our just sort of daily standings update. I don't know if you've looked at the standings today, but it's nuts. The Clippers, Warriors, Wolves, and Grizzlies all have the same record at 46 and 32, and then Denver's at 47 and 32. So it's crazy in the West right now. So all that and more coming up. But wanted to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino. And first wanted to thank all of you that came down to TI on Saturday night for our live show and watch party of that game. We've done a couple watch parties at TI this season, and it really has been a great place to watch a Wolves game. We wanted to let you know that those watch parties will be going on for every game during the playoffs. So if you are looking for a place this postseason to watch games, Treasure Island is a great spot to do it. They do awesome giveaways as well. Someone won an autographed Anthony Edwards jersey at Saturday night's watch party. So keep that on your radar as you are considering places to go to watch the Wolves this postseason. For more information on Wolves watch parties, you can go to ticasino.com. All right, we are now joined by Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick. Jace, we made it. Final week of the regular season. Is the Masters always the final week of the regular season? They always.
It's always. I mean, it's been for a while now. Yeah, the final week of the regular season, and the Wolves always play on Sunday. And for the past 2 weeks, they always play at 2:30. So it's always in the middle of the final round. And I get it. 70% of the people are like, "Shut up, who cares?" Listening to this, but yeah, it's sad. Especially like, it's one thing, I was okay missing it when it was game 82, Pelicans. It mattered. You know, like it was like, hey, are you the 8 or the 9?
Think the Jazz are going to matter?
The Jazz have been the hardest tanking team all year, and they've flipped it into overdrive in these past few weeks. I mean, they are literally getting fined by the league because they're like, you're tanking too hard. Like everybody's doing it, but you guys are doing it too hard. And it's honestly been kind of inspiring from the beginning of the season, the Jazz. I know it's the Wolves podcast, whatever. From the very beginning of the season, they've been playing like Lowry Markkanen these minutes where it's like, you guys aren't really trying to win these games because they clearly were burnt by good starts in the previous couple of years. So their tank wasn't that good. They were ending up with picks that just weren't that great. This year, they absolutely clearly came in with no, we're going to lose from the jump. And they've been doing it, and they're just like locking things in here down the stretch. That game's going to be horrible. And like, I think about it of like, man, what if the Wolves are locked into a seed? It's highly unlikely, but then like that would turn into the worst game of all time. And I would still take the Wolves to win by a lot, no matter who played. But yeah, it's going to be one of those where you go, you watch the Wolves win by like 25. It doesn't mean anything. Like they beat the team that's not trying to win. And then you just talk to them afterwards about, hey, you got this seed and who do you play? Because nothing that happened in the previous 2.5 hours mattered.
Jace
so is the Masters for that.
For listeners, for context, the TGL, right? That's what that's called. The golf league that's indoors. Jace has that like up on the TV during.
I did.
Wolves
it's over
games.
now. Season's
I
over.
know. So I'm just saying, if you're already if you're into that, then this is a whole other level. Look at this transition from the Utah Jazz in Game 82 to Rudy Gobert changing his game from the Utah days to the Minnesota days. I really think it's like this last week, or maybe it's 2 weeks, last 6 games. I was looking it up. Gobert has 103 rebounds, 38 of them are offensive rebounds. I think we've spent so much of the Gobert time, right? Like trying to since he's been here, trying to figure out, how much of Utah Rudy do you like incorporate into this? He's clearly been a pick and roll guy all of his time there. The way I put it to you in the outline I sent you is like, this is just using, I guess, like 2010 centers. But I feel like when he was in Utah, he was playing right like the more Clint Capella sort of way, right? Like you're this pick and roll lob threat. And now it's becoming with this Wolves team, maybe just because so few players can play pick and roll with them, or they don't have the spacing to play pick and roll. It's not like Rudy doesn't set screens. But my point is, I feel like he shifted from the Clint Capella type of center to like the Steven Adams type of center, where he's just trying to be in there offensively, be big, push guys around, get offensive rebounds, set screens. But the way that he's scoring is not the way he scored in Utah on pick and roll lobs. It's catching the ball, oftentimes getting it yourself with an offensive rebound and scoring that way. And I think it's the best fit stylistically, offensively for Rudy to be playing with this group, just because we've been waiting so long, right? To be like, is this going to be a pick and roll team? No, it's not, or it's just not the same as it was Utah. What have you made of kind of this? Well, just Rudy's great play recently, but specifically, I think the offensive side stuff's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The pick and roll stuff for them often gets a little too jumbled. You can do it against certain teams, I feel like, a lot better than others. Like Denver's a team where if they play Denver again, I'd be like, yeah, no, I think you should spam Rudy pick and rolls with Dane.
Yep.
But I think in a lot of matchups, it doesn't make sense because of the personnel that people have, the things they can take away, and the weird positions they can kind of put Rudy in. I think this way is the best version of Rudy, and it's also the most selfless version of Rudy. It's basically like checking your ego offensively at the door. Basically being like, all right, I'm not really a part of the offense in any way, shape, or form here, and I'm just focused on crashing the glass. And obviously, you can create production out of that. And the cool thing is, you can create production and notoriety because, hey, you can grab the ball, put it back, score. Like that's a rebound, and it's 2 points. Looks awesome in the box score. But it's just like, you're having to do it all yourself, and it's just a bunch of dirty grunt work. And there's no, like I said, like there's nothing ego driven about it. Guys will say like, well, that's because you can't do anything when you get the ball, like opponents. But it's just being willing to do everything else. And like I said, the nice thing for him is that offensive production comes on the tail end of it, that you generated literally entirely yourself. But it's the best version. And I think it says a lot of Rudy clearly at some point going, yeah, this is probably what's necessary for us.
Right. Doesn't that feel like like it's his own sort of self-reflection of like, all right, they need me to do more. And he knows like of himself, like, okay, me doing more. Is it like, I'm going to try and go off the dribble or back to the basket or whatever? Like this is the way that Rudy Gobert does more, being bigger, being more physical, and specifically the offensive glass. I mean, it was Philly. So you take that all within a grain of salt, but they for sure lose that game without him. He has 23 points, 19 rebounds, 10 of 11 shooting. He can do that against subpar centers all the time. I mean, we've seen that not just these last couple of weeks, but pretty consistently over the season. If he does have that physical advantage on the opposing five, he can be a problem in the interior of the floor, drawing fouls too. It's not all offensive rebounds. I just feel like that's been the thing that's popped. I mean, 6 offensive rebounds a game over 6 offensive rebounds a game over the last 6 games is crazy, and it's got Rudy back in like to being a very believable part of helping this team come playoffs. I think the question is, or as we were texting about, is like, how relevant is this when you're doing that against a Dembona for the Sixers, or some of these other guys, when the personnel that they're going to be playing, he's going to be specifically matched up against in the playoffs, is going to be a higher caliber of player. What do you think this version of him trying to play this way, even if against better teams, what impact do you think that's going to have?
I mean, I think it still has an impact. I think it's an asset for you. I think it's just a little bit more muted. But when I think of like these tanking teams, they're playing a bunch of guys that and Rudy is this way against a lot of good teams, but it's especially so. It's heightened. It's exponentially greater. That like the physical dominance, bigger, stronger than the guys who he's going up against oftentimes against these teams where, there's a reason why these guys usually don't play. And then so there's that advantage he has. And then also it's just like these guys will try on these tanking teams because obviously they're playing for contracts and stuff, but they just don't necessarily have like the intricacies of the game, the
Yeah.
little things, oh, okay, like my guy's here, he's helping out here, so I need to come down and kind of try to box out Gobert as the guard, as the weak side defender, whatever. And so now Rudy gets more of a free run for the offensive rebounds. Like some of these are very simple putbacks where there's just not a lot of contest there. There's not teams really necessarily game planning for how do we limit this. So I think it will be muted, but I still think it's one of Minnesota's strongest assets and will be everything else around Rudy will have to be better. Than it's been for Minnesota to win games in the playoffs. But if he just continues to bring this approach and effort, increases Minnesota's likelihood of winning games by 5%, where right now it's maybe 25%.
Sure.
So that's where I'm at with it. Like this is great. This would be a huge advantage. This is something they would need against right now on DraftKings. The two most likely by odds first round opponents for Minnesota are the Lakers and Golden State. I think Rudy would have to dominate both of those series for Minnesota to have a chance to win. So, and he has to be this player. And that doesn't mean 20 and 20. That means, I think, 15 and 13 with 4 offensive rebounds or whatever.
Yeah, it's just like about imposing that physicality. And it is the offensive glass. It's going up strong and drawing fouls in the interior. And it is screening. I'm not saying like Rudy isn't. Rudy is screening all the time, creating advantages for Ant, off ball, pin down, whatever it might be. Like using his size and physicality to create advantages for the Wolves. It just is different than like trying to create an advantage so you get the ball back to be on the roll and dunking it yourself, which is, again, if we just flash through his whole Utah offense, those would be like the things that popped up over and over again. Okay, here we go. Conley lob to Gobert there. That is just so much less a main part of what his offensive role is on this team. I don't want to minimize this really either, because it's something he can do consistently over and over again, and it's going to have that wearing impact. I think, if it's Quentin Post at the 5 for the Warriors or Draymond, this is kind of how you have your 5 like lean on an undersized team. And like you, I'm not expecting 25 and 20 games, but kind of that same energy I do think could have an impact on this, where when Rudy is playing this way and kind of getting fed, he's more confident, which then I think does transcend over to the defensive side of the floor, because that's the biggest thing you need, right? Is having that locked in Gobert defensively. And I think over the years we have seen that there's a connection to kind of what his vibe is on the offensive side of the floor being connected to what his effectiveness is on the defensive side of the floor too.
It's also him on the offensive glass is a really nice Band-Aid for what at times still very much stalls out in a half-court set. Yeah. It's all of a sudden you look back on that possession and go, nice dunk for Rudy. And you think it's like, wait, that was the second shot. The first shot was horrible, came out of nothing. But then as you go down the court with 2 points, you just don't even worry about it. If you can do that 3 or 4 times a game, now all of a sudden an offensive rating goes from bad to better, right. Or at least, hey, this is good enough to win with, especially if they're playing close to where they should be defensively. So I mean, I think he solves or at least alleviates a lot of their concerns. Certainly, it's him and Ant as the 2 most important players as they head into the playoffs here. And
clearly,
everybody else has to play a lot better anyway, especially than what they did against Philly. Otherwise, even those 2 probably can't lift them over any of these like quality teams, of which we haven't seen them playing forever. But I mean, we just see it. We just see the impact of like, okay, if this team's going to make like a serious run and knock off some really good teams, Rudy has to be one of the 3 best players on the court.
Yeah, no, that's the way to put it. Like if and when they win a playoff series, part of our recap of that series is Rudy was doing these things, or Rudy was great guarding Yoke. Rudy was great creating space for Ant. Rudy was great on the offensive boards. Like that part has, and it's been happening. I'm with you. It hasn't been against good opponents because we are here in March and April, and that's just the NBA right now. Teams are hurt, or you're playing tanking teams. I do like genuinely. I feel really good about the Gobert part of this, and I do think it will not to the same degree, but I do think it will translate over to the playoffs. Just so we could kind of rip through a little bit of this Philly game because it wasn't all that exhilarating. But I thought the two big
It wasn't
parts,
the last 2 minutes.
yeah, well, that's what I was going to get to. It was like the
Yeah.
Rudy kind of was the engine the whole time of trying, as he does against these lesser teams, keeps Wolves in games when, you know, the focus and intensity isn't a 10 out of 10. Rudy's often is. And so that kind of carried them to the game being close. At the end, they were up by like 10 with 4 minutes to go. Philly made it really close. And we had another one of those Wolves late game offense situations at the end of that game. Obviously, Ant hits that crazy dagger three with like 7 seconds to go, but also was hit another like big three a couple possessions before that. He had that one floater driving down there. There were, like, if you just isolated to Ant, there were encouraging parts, I think, of Ant's late game offense. But if you look at that last 3 minutes and 43 seconds of the game and you go, okay, the Wolves are up 10 with 3:43 to go and it got close, and Ant had to make some crazy dagger over a double team with this dribble dead. Like, it's not good that they got to that point of it. And this has obviously been, you know, an issue that's plagued this team all season, of just not being able to be anything offensively in the last couple minutes of the game like they are earlier. What did you make of the Ant part of it, and just kind of the group as a whole as it, you know, pertained to the end of that fourth quarter on Saturday night?
Yeah, that's what Ant, like that shot over the double team. It should be noted that there's value. Obviously, when it shows up, it's, you know, it's all over highlights and everything. So it doesn't really need to be noted here. But the value of having somebody who can hit that shot, who can save you, is amazing, because you're going to end up in that spot in some game. You don't want to. The problem with the Wolves is you don't want to put yourself in that spot where you're taking that, oh, this has very little chance of going in. And they find themselves in that situation all the time. But some teams don't even have anybody who can make that, where the Wolves do have a guy who can make that. And I think there's like, at some point you might have to steal a game, especially in the playoffs or something, where it's like, yep, this team defended the hell out of this, and we've got nothing. But Minnesota just puts themselves in that own position all the time, regardless of what the defense is doing. So that's the problem. But I thought, like, the driving bucket, those are the types of looks, and like the finish there was like a really good finish for Ant, and something that we don't see a lot of, or haven't seen a lot of this year. And that would be one of like few points you could pick at with his game. So I think like those types of plays are super encouraging, of, okay, you've got to be able to score at different levels, especially if you're going to be leaned upon so heavily at the end of games here. And then that bailout three was amazing. I thought defensively, I know you can say Quentin Grimes, like, that was Tracy McGrady-esque. Boy, the shots he was hitting, they were insane, but they didn't do anything to get the ball out of his hands in those spots. I didn't understand, especially given who else Philly has on the court, not even just like straight up traps or something to, and I don't know if that needs to be just cognizance of the guys on the court, or maybe Chris Finch going,
we
got to do something here. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if I don't think that call was ever made. I would be surprised if it was just that poorly executed. But Grimes just got kind of to his spots, and yeah, they were really tough shots. I understand that, but that's the only way you can lose in that spot, and they were allowing it to happen. So I just thought defensively, execution, maybe from schematics, and also execution of, if I'm guarding Grimes, I'm like, I'm 2 feet away from this guy. I'm not helping off anybody else. I'm just face guarding him. So multiple things defensively where I'm like, this might happen. Guys can get hot, and you can go, well, that was crazy. Nothing we could do there. But there is some, when it's only one guy on the court, you can do something about it. You know, like, look at what Houston did to the Warriors in the first half last night. Steph Curry got 3 shots for the first half. I understand this is a little different, but the idea of, we are taking that guy away,
right?
It's doable.
Yeah, and I think it highlights how the defense does connect to the offense with this team as it pertains to clutch time. That's something, I know the Wolves didn't have like incredible clutch time numbers, but those are last season. But we felt, you know, watching those games, that the defense won a lot of close games for them last season, or at least made it so the offense didn't have to go, you know, blow for blow with the opposing team's Quentin Grimes, you know, hitting all these shots. Like, part of the solution,
the 10-point game never got down to under 5 in last year. It just didn't.
Yeah.
Barely played any clutch time games, because they never would have allowed like a Quentin Grimes to go off in that spot.
Yeah, and that's just there's gonna be in the playoffs, close games, you know, and I think those alarm bells are going to go off when it's game 1 against the Lakers or whatever in the first round, and it's going to be about needing to guard. Be aware of Luka. Do you need to take out Luka here? Do you need to stay Reeves, James, whatever it might be, while also taking care of running functional offense on the other side of the floor? And I think it's a legitimate concern, X factor, something to maybe not really believe in about the Wolves when we do talk about a playoff series is I think their ability to do both things, right? They just haven't shown us a lot of ability to be a good clutch time defensive team and an offensive team that executes or gets to what they want. I do think in Rudy and Ant, you have 2 star clutch time players on those side of the floor. Rudy's a star defensive player in those spots, as has been many times. And Ant, as the Philly game showed, is and the Denver. I mean, a ton of stuff recently with Ant has shown, okay, he can do it. He can do it on the offensive side of the floor too. But you get this fear, right, of like, okay, what if Rudy isn't there doing that defensively? What does that mean for the clutch time defense? What if Ant isn't hitting those shots? What if they are just putting 2 on the ball every time he crosses half court? All right, what then happens? And I just don't think we're gonna have any reason to be in another week be like, I really, really believe in this Wolves team in the clutch. They're just going to need to prove that, like many things with the playoffs, they just do it better in the playoffs because they care more than they do the regular season. But I don't know how I can go into the playoffs being like the Wolves are going to do this.
Yeah, I think that's a big question of everything for the Wolves heading into the playoffs, right? I mean,
Yep.
I don't know how much evidence we have for anything. I will say at the end of the game, we can get to that more, but I think the end of the game in Philly, you looked at like that Mike turnover in the backcourt, and that was the play. I mean, to watch that and then watch the end of that Duke Houston game, I was like, well, I've seen this. But Mike's coming up the court, and then it was almost if I don't know way Philly was trying to do it, but if it was like a disguised double team, that would have been brilliant. I mean, it was like we're not doubling, and then all of a sudden, as all the Wolves leave the court, head up the court, now somebody stays back and it's like, let's double. And just the general thought of, okay, Mike has to pass the ball there. Julius and Ant have to make themselves more available to receive
100%.
the ball there. Or somebody has to just come, just set one of those dummy screens that always alleviates everything in those spots. And it's just generally with this team, especially when push comes to shove, just the general awareness of things that you see a lot of other teams or players do second nature just doesn't always pop up here. And that's a tough thing. We're like, oh man, mind-numbing mistake. And it's from the same team that had, turnovers at the end of overtime, double overtime against Denver, where you're like, oh, like that could have cost you the game because they don't take care of taking care of the ball, doing the simple little things in the moments where it matters most. You're right. It's just not like a detail-oriented team. And that's why I think they end up in these tough spots.
I do on a couple other late game things I want to get to, but we'll grab our first break here to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lanik at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if you are in the market to buy or sell your home in Minnesota or Wisconsin, that's where Adriana is a licensed realtor, and we would love if you started your process of buying or selling your home with her. You can do that by going to thedancingrealtor.com or by calling or texting her at 715-304-9920. This is going to help your process of buying or selling your home. It's a requirement to work with a realtor to be able to maximize this position for you. I know many of you have bought and sold homes with Adriana through this process, and we're incentivizing you working with her by signing up for one of those free consultation sessions. And when you do, you're entered to win a pair of free Wolves tickets. Again, go check out our website at thedancingrealtor.com for more information. You can call or text her at 715-304-9920. Jace, I'm going to do prize picks right now here too.
All right. Let's do it.
It's Masters week. There's a whole bunch of stuff up there. We got the national championship tonight. The two, I did not do Masters because I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't really know what I'm talking about with college basketball either. But I said I like Walter Clayton Jr. to have more than 20 points. Yeah, right. Exactly. I was like, okay, I'll do that. Then give me Sabonis to have more than 19.5 points tonight. Those are the two I had for Monday night on prize picks. What do you got?
Yeah. I don't watch a ton of college basketball, but oh my god, Walter Clayton Jr. Like he's
Right.
one of those where you look at his size and go, I don't know about the NBA. We'll see. I'd have to
Yeah.
watch more. I've just watched a couple tournament things, but that guy goes on some shot making sprees that are unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I didn't get why it was 20 for his number. It was like
I think it's because Houston plays some really low scoring basketball games.
Oh, okay. See,
And
that's helpful. 34, 30, 13, 23, 23 over
yeah,
the tournament for him. Yeah.
Yeah, Houston does kind of grind out a lot of games, but if Florida scores, it's usually him. So that makes sense. I'll go Masters. Surprisingly,
shocker.
Yeah, I know. First one, total bias. Patrick Reed. Just my. I've always had an affinity for Patrick Reed because everybody else dislikes him. 72 strokes under, obviously less than.
There you go.
No question. And then Scotty Scheffler, I would just take his less than. It was up, 70 strokes. That's a pretty low number. You have to shoot 300 to go under it, but that guy just owns Augusta and plays well there almost all the time. I would find it hard pressed that he wouldn't at least push that.
Yeah, this is just for the Thursday round, but this is obviously then they'll have it for the Friday. As it goes on there. The Masters is just golf in general is a fun additional thing to be able to do on here. Obviously, we're talking about the NBA ones all the time. We do the NFL, but this will be a loaded weekend for golf here as well. PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app is where you can make a daily fantasy lineup. If you don't have an account yet and want to create one, if you use the promo code Dane, they will throw $50 in your account when you make your first $5 lineup. All right, a couple other late game things from that. I noted Nikhil's been closing more recently. I just feel like in general, Nikhil's sort of spot in the pecking order, his primacy has moved up. People will point to the Denver game. I think he's closed the last 3 games since then, or including that game. But it's been coming since before that. I think it makes sense to not leave any of these 8 guys out of the possibility of closing a game. Obviously, Jaden wasn't playing well against Philly, so they opted to close with Nikhil over him. It was the normal starting lineup, but Alexander Walker for McDaniels was the closing lineup. Gobert, Randle, Edwards, Conley. And I think that the positive way to spin this, and I do believe this, is they could close games in the playoffs with any of the bench players, right?
Yeah.
Nas, Dante, Nikhil could if they're having a good game, and I think they should. And I think we've gotten to the point where there's probably a little bit more acceptance and understanding of that being the way that this is going to work with the team. Obviously, if you're Randle or Gobert or Jaden or whoever, and you don't close the game in the playoffs, there's probably going to be a level of frustration to that. But that's just sort of the way that this team is built. And if Nikhil, who's pretty clearly been the 8th man, is getting closing opportunities, I think that's a good indicator that everything's on the table for this team and probably should be.
Yeah, it was interesting with Nikhil. You talked about pretty clearly the 8th man. I don't think there's any question of that. I was looking through his game log because the Wolves are making their organization pushes for guys to be on all defense, all NBA, all the awards. And Nikhil, I was going through the game log and I was like, has this guy played enough games with 20 minutes? And he's played every game. And then 14 games where I think is where I got to. I'd have to double check. I did it last week where he's not played 20 minutes. And that's enough. You can actually play 19 where you don't get it. But yeah, it's 14 is where he doesn't play 20 minutes. And that's not something that a key player usually would have be the case. But there have been spurts in the season where he plays, 17, 18, whatever. That's how things have kind of fluctuated throughout the year. Yeah. Dante's had stretches where he doesn't play 20 minutes in games. So it is very much like up and down thing, but Nikhil's played really well of late. And I think just back to your point of things can go up and down with everybody. It can be your night, not your night, your matchup, not your matchup. And I think that the Wolves would be a prime candidate of series to series should they make a run in the playoffs. Of Finch has talked about in the past, but legitimately, this is a series for this guy. This is not a series for this guy. Doesn't mean that guy won't play, but probably won't play that much. Probably not going to close. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of that. And it's good, I think, to see the variance and the willingness to pull different levers.
Yeah, Finch made that 8 starters comment plenty of times earlier in the season, and you're kind of like that was like a little bit more frustrating when it wasn't working because it did. You said you had 8 and it didn't feel like you had 5. But I do think internally, like amongst those 8 guys, if one of them were to close, it's not like grabbing a random guy from deep in the
Right.
bench. You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be
There's a
different if it was like
respect
Jalen
there.
Clark or
Right.
Terrence Shannon Jr. Like, oh, they're closing this game. I don't know. If you're Jaden, I'd be like, what? You know, like I do think the starters think Nikhil, Dante, and Nas are all good enough to close games. They've proven that. And yeah, it leaves theoretically, right, like a comfortable flexibility to the end of games. And when we know this team struggles to be totally kind of dialed in late in games, I think it allows Finch to like press or lean on buttons that are like, all right, we need a little bit more defense here. We need a little bit more shooting or whatever. Like, I think that's why Nikhil closed that game, was the offense just kind of started drying up when Jaden was out there, the second half of the fourth quarter. Philadelphia comes back, and I think, Finch wanted a little bit, another shooting option out there. And as Jaden does many things better than Nikhil does, one thing like Nikhil, I think, could be more relied upon in the last 2 minutes of the game is like that swing above the break 3. Like that, I have a lot more confidence in Nikhil hitting that than Jaden. And I, again, just think it's good that they're willing to show some of that flexibility. I think they need it.
Yeah, the only downside of the whole thing was that I think it's pretty clear over the course of the season that they didn't establish things that you can totally comfortably rely on of here's what we do, here's what we get to, all this kind of stuff. I think it is like they're playing a match game all the time, because it can kind of go back to identity or whatever. I still think I know what this team's best identity is, and it's just like harassing perimeter defense with Rudy on the back end of it, generating misses and turnovers that lead to running out offense. But even that's a little bit inconsistent. There are plenty of nights, especially lately, where we don't see any of that. And then that's how you end up in these grinds. But yeah, it's just, that's the best way to win for them. You do wonder like how many teams make deep runs where it's like, we got 8, whoever's playing well, we'll go with them.
Yeah. That part's not super encouraging about it, but it is, again, I think it's counterbalanced some by like, Nas is a starter on a lot of teams, or Nikhil maybe would be too.
Houston's the same. Houston's the same way. I mean, that I would say that they've just been more like it's good across the board no matter what. But they're a team where it's like that they might go with this, they might go with this, and I think a lot of it's matchup based on who they like, who they think they can guard with, etc.
What do you think about Julius Randle specifically at the end of games? It becomes so much. I mean, those are ant centric plays. Those are the times where Ant is kind of forced to decision make a little bit more. Where that's where we see Ant see so many doubles late in games. Julius Randle, like, theoretically should be a lever that they can pull off of that. I just felt like, it's just kind of off the top of my head, but that the Randle offensive role late in games has been a little bit wonky, or just he kind of falls into purely like a role player when normally during the course of a game, he's one of the offensive engines, and I just feel like that's part of what's missing offensively here too is, okay, if they are doing the thing where like, we're getting it out of Ant's hands, it does seem like it should be easier for this team to be able to quickly shift out of that. Okay, there's 2 on Ant. Let's play 4 on 3 through Randle. And that doesn't seem to come to fruition with anywhere near the frequency that I think we would anticipate it should, right?
Yeah, this was my primary thought off of the Denver game in the last 2 possessions of the end of regulation and the end of the first overtime. And I think it took too long, especially at the end of regulation, to even get into it. It took too long to get the ball across the court. They left themselves very few outs with just how long, like starting in the backcourt and then just taking forever to dribble the ball up. But the general idea of, and other teams are going to do this, somebody's going to put 2 on Ant. Okay, especially if he's been playing well at the end of the game. I don't think Julius is like one of their better off the catch players, where it's just second nature, the 0.5 mentality. I think we saw that in both situations, both of those possessions, where it's get the ball, size up his guy, where it's kind of like a shifted defense, and it should be catch and go or catch and shoot or catch and rotate, whatever, catch, swing it. it was catch and think. And when there's 4, 5, 6 seconds left, there's not really time for catch and think. And that's not the way to play out of a 4-on-3 anyway. So I very much think one time was catch, you get yourself into a tough shot. One was like catch, think, and then just grenade to Jaden. So I didn't think like either one of those, where Nas probably would have either just went off the catch and attacked off the bounce, or he would have just probably pulled the quick trigger 3 or swung right away. And I don't know if that would have worked either, but I think that's how it's supposed to be executed in that situation. Right. So I think with Julius, I think there could be more possessions, and I think they did this a little bit against Philly, and Finch noted it, where if you like the matchup for Julius, play through Julius. But other times, if you know, like coming out of a timeout or something, hey, we're going to have Ant here, and we're going to either let Ant go, or we're gonna wait for the double and play out of that, then maybe it isn't a Julius situation. I just don't think that's like a strength of his game.
Yeah, I do think it is speed. That's the biggest, or getting rid of that delay, because when it does delay and it is the late game and the defense is there and engaged and be up into him.
Yeah.
Then what Julius has to do is what he did that first shot at the end of regulation, right? Where now it's a step back 3, which if I'm the opposing team, and Julius Randle has the ball, I can't think of not like Julius can't make that. We've seen him make step back 3, but compared to like getting downhill, right. You for sure live with that. And so I just think, generally speaking, late game or whatever, the slower Randle goes, the worse of the shot it generates for him, given what his kind of offensive skill set is. When it's been the best Julius, right, this season, so many of those playmaking things are like, all right, he went so quick, so he got that first step on the first defender. Another defender had to come in, rotate over, and now he's making those playmaking moves. Late in the game, if there's 3 seconds left and you catch it, maybe you can't kick it, but it's the same idea of like, it's just got to go right away.
I just think you revert to your natural tendencies when like the pressure is on, or when it's like the last possession here, there's a chance to win the game. And I think his natural tendency, Ant's natural tendency, when Cat was here, his natural tendency is to hold and survey and be like, what am I doing here? What's my plan? And there's just not time for that. Where like a Nas, even when he's not playing well, and I don't think he's played very well lately, his first thought is like, go.
Right.
What am I doing? Go. So I think maybe Julius is just in the corner or whatever. And I know he's not maybe the premier spacer there either, but maybe he's the screener on Ant. If like, hey, it's going to turn into a blitz, but then he's the roll guy that Ant's throwing to on the slip there. Whatever the case may be, I don't think that first pass, the obvious pass in the 2-on-1, especially when the clock is at a premium, is necessarily the number one guy I'd want there.
I think it's been interesting where they've been trying to use Ant late in games. It was kind of the Denver game, right? Ant's crossing half court and 2 guys are guarding him right away. And so kind of what the pivot was in the overtimes was they tried to get Ant on the side of the floor. And if Ant can get a touch on the side of the floor, it's not impossible for him to get doubled. There was that, the end of the second overtime against Denver where he does get that catch in the slot and Denver still brings the double, and that's where Ant turned it over and Westbrook goes down the other way, misses the layup. But in general,
and then Philadelphia.
that too. It's the same thing. Like
it is. I don't know why Ant just didn't shoot it against Denver. Why didn't he just shoot that?
Right, would have made it.
Yeah. I mean,
but don't you agree that that's like, all right, at least that's where they're trying to target Ant getting the ball. They're taking it rather than just being like, okay, they're doubling Ant at the top and we're going to try and play 4-on-3 against that. Like, do that. But when they want Ant to be the one scoring or not have to be like, all right, they doubled me, I'm going to pass it, they try to get it to him quickly in the slot so he can attack downhill. It's harder right, if Ant's just attacking from the top, it's really easy for the big to rotate over to just be at the front of the rim, to be a rim protector there. If he's on the weak side, or like the big needs to rotate over from the weak side to the strong side to be there. I thought like the really big dunk he had in the first quarter was like the perfect example of this. It was Julius set a pin down for him. Yabusele got switched onto guarding Ant, and now they swing to Ant in the slot, and that's just a jab and go. And he's past Yabusele, and I don't remember who the big was that rotated over, but he rotated over slowly, and that's a dunk for Ant. I just think we talk a lot about, how like Shea has his spots, right, that he gets to, and those are more like he's dribbling into his spots. I feel like this is Finch's way of trying to like set up a spot for Ant a little bit more when he maybe can't self-create it just from the top of the key.
Yeah, and I think they did have a bucket maybe coming out of a timeout or something in the fourth for Ant where he came around a screen and got to a really great spot by the bucket and
The floater
scored.
one?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And so I think they've had a few of those things. And even I think at the end of regulation, I think it was kind of the same idea of that Ant gets the ball there and attacks around the corner. And if you watch that, Ant just kind of anticipated the hedge out and he didn't attack it with much speed or purpose. And so he slowed up. And so then the hedge did come out. And then he was kind of stuck in the middle of no man's land. Where I think if he just gets the ball and like it makes the effort to go full speed around the corner, either you're probably drawing a foul there because it's really hard to hedge on somebody who's coming in hard. Or you're just stretching out the defense, and now it's a much easier pass. I think he kind of put himself in no man's land there because he's thinking, here's what they're probably going to do. And he almost was like, I'm going to change course on it, but you're just coming back into your own man there. And so I think that's tough. I think the general principle, though, the idea is right of, hey, let's getting the ball coming off a screen from like the side pick and roll or whatever, or sometimes on the catch coming off a screen.
Yeah,
that's the best one for sure. It takes a lot of the decision making out of it, and it's like you are putting your best player in the spot for him to best succeed, and he often does. But I think that's generally, I think you're right. The side of the floor, it's just so much harder to help from multiple angles there, take away everything. And that's where Ant can dissect the game, have a lot of options available to him, and it's hard to just have a set defense. So yeah, I think they're gearing more and more towards that, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it all the way through the end of the playoffs here of them trying to go more in that direction, because it is a lot easier in the middle of the court to be like, here's how we're going to at least make sure this guy doesn't beat us.
Yeah, I remember asking Finch like earlier in Ant's career about kind of like Ant taking the Harden or Luka sort of path of being the heliocentric offensive player. And Finch has always kind of maintained that Ant's superpower is that attacking against a shifted defense, like from the side. Yes, sometimes he is going to need to be the initiator, but I do believe this has always been Finch's belief of like, this is the best place we can give Ant the ball with the least resistance. It's just about, can they get him the ball there? And I think what happens is, what if they do deny that, top lock that, whatever it might be, to try and not let Ant have that? Well, then he kind of sometimes fights that, and it's like, okay, he was supposed to pop out here to the side, but it kind of gets busted, and then he just goes up and like takes literally like a handoff from whoever had the ball at the top, and now here you are again with Ant at the top. It just requires like some patience from Ant and his teammates about like, you got to execute getting him the ball there. You got to set the screen that makes him available there. It's a better way, I think, for this team to approach late game offense, or just offense in general with Ant. But you got to be able to get there. And those are the things we haven't necessarily seen over the course of the season, is the Wolves' ability to get to what they want to get to when they want to get to it. It so many times, particularly in late game offense, the possessions ends up being broken and they get to whatever they have, as highlighted by that last shot against Philly, which Ant can make. And Ant is an incredible shot maker, one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. It's about how many times is that shot going in out of 10 if you take it, versus you just get him a catch in a better position to be able to attack against a shifted defense. The expected value of those things are night and day different. Over the last week, that's become clear to me. And you talked about this last week, of kind of starting games even with Ant in the corner and having Mike initiate rather than Ant just right away the first possession of the game going. This is their aim, or it appears to be their aim with Ant.
Yeah, and I think we see it when they do it well. Just some of the looks that Ant gets, it's like sometimes that can be a streak starter for them. Like one of the ones around the hoop or whatever, that kind of got him going, and then all of a sudden the 3-ball in semi-transition got going, and it's just easy looks often lead to him making the tougher looks. Like that has just been a very frequent thing of his career, when he tries to generate tough looks out of nothing, when there has been nothing established, then those often just don't go. And that's just kind of basketball and the way it works. Like you have to establish a rhythm, and then now all of a sudden the special side of you really comes out. And that's just been a very frequent thing for Ant. So how do they get that rhythm going in the most efficient way possible?
Let me grab one more break here. Today's show is brought to you. We got a golf sponsor, Jace. PXG.
Love it.
Spring is here. The time has come for some new golf clubs, and that means it's time to head to your local PXG store for a fitting. PXG makes the best golf clubs, period. I went over to the PXG store at Southdale a few weeks back to get fitted for clubs, and I'm not a big golfer at all, but it was interesting to really see sort of like the scientific process behind it, and the fitting and the weighting of the clubs. For so many years when I've golfed, I've been like, I don't understand what I'm doing and why it's leading the ball to go so far left or so far right. But just with the technology that they had, and adjusting the length of the club, the weight of the club head, it really, I was there for like a half hour, and the shots I'm taking right away at the beginning versus the shots I was taking at the end, it was just a really interesting scientific sort of thing that I was not, again, not a huge golf guy, but was not aware that they would be able to do that for your golf shot. So the fastest way to improve your performance on the golf course is a PXG fitting. You can schedule your fitting today, and for a limited time, you could save up to 20% on your entire order. Head over to pxg.com/DaneMoore. That's pxg.com/DaneMoore to save up to 20% on your entire order. pxg.com/DaneMoore. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Jace, I want to talk a little bit just about the standings. You've been updating that article, which has been like a lifesaver for me, where I like sit down with my notebook and I'm like, all right, tiebreaker, this, that. Now I'm just going over to your article and reading where exactly the Wolves sort of sit in terms of this crazy Western Conference, that with 1 week to go, maybe these games aren't going to be super interesting against the Jazz and Nets and stuff like that, or just around the league against tanking teams. But I don't remember anything like this from how condensed it is. Can you just kind of help? I haven't even looked at it really this morning, but
I haven't updated it yet this morning, so.
But you will. You have
this
podcast
in my preparation first.
There you go.
Yeah, I update it every day. I'll do it shortly after we finish recording this. Yeah, I do try to do it by noon every day. Yeah, I mean, you just look at where we're at right now. It's everybody 4 through 8 is separated by a half game, and 4 of the teams are tied. Right. I mean, and Denver is only a half game up, and so Minnesota right now is 7. Where if Denver just lost another game and then all of the teams were tied, Minnesota would be, I think, 4. So it literally comes down to who did you beat? How many times did you beat them? The Wolves are in a great spot with tiebreakers as long as the Clippers and Nuggets are involved, because they went 4-0 against Denver is the greatest asset anybody has in the tiebreaker thing, because it just goes head to head with however many teams are tied, and having a 4-0 mark that can contribute to your record is nobody else has that. They also have a 3-0 against the Clippers. So they're in really good shape for a lot of these tiebreakers, for most of them. They obviously are 0-2 against Memphis and 1-3 against the Warriors. They play Memphis one more time. That can shift things one way or the other. It's been very interesting to look into and read about. One thing I noted again this morning just on Twitter that I'll put in the article too is it's going to be really tough for them to get the 3, because to be in the 3, they will have to, if there is a 3-way tie in any way, shape, or form, a division winner automatically gets it. And in the 3 seed,
what a weird rule.
You're talking about the Pacific winner, probably. Yeah. There's no way that a 3-way tie involving the 3 seed would not include the Pacific winner. So Minnesota will have to just flat out get into a 2-way tie, and they would lose a 2-way tie with the Lakers. So the Lakers have to go 1-3 the rest of the way. Minnesota have to win out for them to have any chance at the 3. You're probably looking at 4 through 8, but Minnesota's in a good spot with a lot of those tiebreakers.
What could you say what the betting odds thing said again for their most likely first round opponent?
Yeah, sure. So I just looked at this morning, and it was the top 2 are the Warriors and the Lakers. Let me pull up my tweet.
So is the idea then that's like the Wolves in the 6, or I don't even?
That's a good point. I think it is that the Wolves in the 6, or probably even that it's 4-5 with probably the Warriors. I would think it would be 3-6 Lakers, 4-6 Warriors. The Wolves, their first round opponent, it's plus 240. So none of these are like minus 150 or something, where it's super likely. There's a lot in the air. Plus 240 for the Lakers, plus 275 that it's the Warriors. And so like better than 3-1 odds. Yeah. Houston 6-1 is next. That would obviously be coming in as the 7. in the first round of the play-in. The Clippers are plus 650. That probably have to be a 4-5 thing. And then the Nuggets are 8-1, so they do not see the Nuggets and Wolves matching up in a first-round series. Where a short while ago, I think it looked super likely. But just with Denver, their remaining schedule, what they've done, their position in some of these tiebreakers, I think that's the general thought. Is it's not looking like those two teams will cross paths.
How different of quality of an opponent or matchup for the Wolves do you think the Lakers versus the Nuggets are? Because I think we were both on, like, if it is the Nuggets, even if it's the 3-6, given what we've seen this year, and I'm going back to last year as well, probably it might maybe even favor the Wolves in that matchup, even if they don't have home court. Like, what is it for you? What do you think the delta is in your confidence of them being able to beat Denver in a first round series versus the Lakers, which seems like the more likely right now, and I guess the most likely according to DraftKings or whatever you're using?
I think Minnesota with Denver can win because of offense and defense. I truly believe that. If you think about the first three games, particularly, not that they played poorly offensively, they scored 140 in 2 overtimes in that last game in Denver. I didn't think that was Minnesota's best performance in general. But they were, guys heading into that 4th game had like 130 plus offensive ratings against Denver. And we've seen in the playoffs, particularly how much they've frustrated Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray. It just put so much on Nikola Jokic's shoulders. So I just think they can win in multiple ways there. I think they have multiple outs where I think the Lakers, I think they would have to score. And this team having to have a lot of its pressure on its offense to win any series against a team I don't know how much they could really bother just because of all the ball handlers the Lakers have. I think that puts a lot of pressure on an offensive thing that has just been super up and down and inconsistent. And like you've seen how easy it is for them to stall out. So I think it's a big difference. I really do. I think they could win that series. I think Rudy would have to dominate. I think he'd have to be one of the very best players on the court and impose his will at all times. But I think the path is much more difficult. I think you have fewer outs, I guess, is my main thought.
Did you see any of the Lakers Thunder game last night?
No. I actually I didn't watch a ton yesterday in the afternoon and paid a little more attention to the women's championship game. But but I saw the box score and saw 15 for 20 at one point from 3. That's insane.
It was not. Yeah. Which, like,
the Lakers is tough that I don't see more than 5 guys, but that 5-man lineup and just the pure length, even if like you question, is there enough size? Is there enough whatever of Reeves, Doncic, LeBron, Rui, and Finney-Smith? That's a lot of length, and 5 guys who can shoot the ball. So that's right. It's everything that you think you would have wanted in the NBA like 4 years ago. Positionless, length, all this stuff, and that can still absolutely be a path. But size we have seen does matter too. So
yeah, we've talked so much about Phoenix and Denver last season, and the reason that they beat them being like they had pretty clear, like, all right, we can take out this player. The Denver one is trying to eliminate Murray and Porter Jr. from that. Obviously, Booker and Beal did not play well in that first round series, as they got kind of the same Ant and Jaden assignment right there. And then the Wolves plan was like, all right, we'll survive KD in the first round. We'll survive Jokic, or now it would be, we'll survive Jokic with Rudy and in that matchup there. It is harder for me to see how many of those like neutralizing type things they have against the Lakers, and especially Luka. And we do have last season's playoffs, of course, on a different team, but just not having any sort of neutralizing factor for Luka, which I do think is just like a product of his size, and maybe just being a lot better than Jamal Murray or Bradley Beal, whatever. But they don't have that same neutralizing factor on Luka, and he's what really the 3-point shooting stood out last night, but that was yesterday when they played the Thunder. But he just looks like that force, and he's being guarded by the Thunder, right? Where I'm not sure any team has like a guy for Luka in that way, because if it was somebody, it'd be Lou Dort, right? That'd probably be my best guy to guard Luka. But when Luka's right there, he can't be neutralized in the way some of these other, even all-star caliber guards like Booker can and have been neutralized from them. So yeah, it's got to be Lakers leaders in the clubhouse of least the team that they would least like to face of those 3 through 8 teams. I think, right?
Yeah, I think of those 3 through 8 for sure. That's what I would do it with. I would say the one thing from Minnesota that you could maybe put your optimism behind of like what happened in the West Finals last year is like Derek Lively was a huge part of that.
Yep.
Of like it was a tandem of, and the Lakers, especially if they play 5 with a smaller thing, when the Wolves would blitz, Derek Lively was awesome out of the short roll, and certainly the Lakers, if you're putting a Rui or a Finney Smith or a LeBron,
Right.
you have good options out of that short roll anyway. But it was also the lob threat. Every time Rui had to come over and help after Luka would get a guy on his hip, it was just the easy lob to Gafford or Lively. Automatic 2 points, just like the demoralizing, what do you even do here? The Lakers don't really have that. Yeah, the Lakers don't really have that. Not to say like Jackson Hayes can't throw down a dunk or whatever, but they're not as good of options there. So I think maybe there will be less things that can kill you with Luka. Luka has fewer options, I think, just given the roster that they have. So that could be helpful for Minnesota. That would be my only thing.
Yeah, I'd be curious about Ant getting the like defensive matchup in a Lakers series. Be like Finney Smith and Vanderbilt would be on him, who are like more of the like big, strong wing defender. Kind of like Dort, right? And I think Dort does the best job on Ant in the NBA. Now, Finney Smith and Vanderbilt are not as they're that same archetype, maybe, but they're not as good there. I just think that's something. If Ant struggled in a Lakers series, I think we would point to like, oh, Vanderbilt's really frustrating him. He's picking him up right at half court, and as we've seen Vanderbilt guard him, over the years, or Finney Smith has a lot in high leverage games, has a lot of experience guarding those type of players there. I think, well, for the Wolves to win any sort of playoff series, Ant needs to be great and overcome whatever it is that the opponent is throwing at him. I just think that would be the thing in a Lakers matchup that he would need to overcome is like, can you be great even against more physical wings who are just going to try to annoy you for 7 games? That's what Vanderbilt and Finney Smith do.
Yeah, and I think we've seen JJ Redick and the intricacies of their game-to-game game plan. I would expect the Lakers defensively to be the most in the gaps team you've ever seen against Ant and make him make those kickouts or whatever. They would pressure him up top. They wouldn't give up. I don't think they would give up too many step-in threes off like a pick and roll. I think they would pressure up, make him have to go by and then make a read for the kick out. And then the Wolves would have to knock down open threes. Then
they would leave Jaden open.
I think so too. There are a few teams, Houston, the Lakers, where they just game plan. It's like, here's what you are going to have. We're going to try to pick at what you are supposedly not good at. And you're going to have to beat it that way. I don't know. We talk about all these things and I wanted to get to this today. And so I want to get to it here. Like, we don't know. We haven't seen this team, the Timberwolves, the healthy Timberwolves, play against a good, healthy team. The Pacers loss in Indiana is about the only thing we've got. In for months now. This is, you talk about how everybody's playing tanking teams. Like, not everybody is. Other teams are playing these important, impactful games. It's why at least Milwaukee, I know Dame isn't there, but it should be everybody else. And then Memphis is a game where I'm going to lean a lot on to be like, where are the Wolves?
Right.
Because we don't know heading into this week. You could say, oh, they've won this many games since March 1st or whatever. They haven't played anybody. I mean, even like you look at the Pistons, it's like the Pistons were missing 3 guys to start that game, and then they lost 3 more. And there's nothing to work off of where we can go, well, when you have this team who presents these matchup problems and has, generally speaking, like these defensive principles and they can scheme, we don't know. We haven't seen it. I never felt like I've been flying more blind with the team than this one, because the Wolves weren't healthy for like a month there. And then when they got healthy, they haven't played anybody who's been healthy. So I don't know. I really don't know where this team is at. And I think these 2 games will give us a better indicator heading into the playoffs. So we have some idea of what we're working with here.
I mean, how many times have we heard our biggest competition is ourselves over the last 6 weeks? Sure. That's been true. That's been true, because the competition hasn't been high level competition since, other than that Indiana game.
We're literally looking at, in that streak since March 1st, they played 5 games against teams that are above 500. 2 losses to Indiana, one where Indiana was a skeleton team.
Yeah.
Then the 2 games against Denver, and then the Pistons game, which again, it's been nobody. And so, yeah.
And we're not even saying like,
not as a bad thing.
Know what it's going to be.
Just don't know.
What is it going to be when the biggest competition is not themselves? That's
Right.
I think what the question is, because that's their first round playoff series. Their biggest competition is not going to be themselves. It's going to be Luka Doncic, or it's going to be Nikola Jokic, or it's going to be what like that is what they're going to have to be, while still holding on to those same principles of like keeping themselves in line and doing all the thing, the inconsistency that is true about this team. But yeah, like having any sort of like really strong opinion on how the Wolves are going to fare in any series, and I would include Denver in the other way too. Like, oh, I really can't. I don't know. Like, we don't know which
four losses in a row. Jamal Murray's missed every one of those games.
Yeah.
You know, like, but you can say like you don't like their team. I certainly don't anyway.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we both just said we would pick the Wolves in a
Yeah.
Denver series, even if Denver was
Yeah.
was the home team. But yeah, the Denver with Murray and Porter Jr. is different than the Denver team that they played a week ago. Obviously, the Wolves didn't have Reed and DiVincenzo too, but that even just all of that, like those are four huge players. If the Wolves were to play the Nuggets in the first round, be like, okay, well, that none of those guys played in that game, so how relevant is any of this? I do think these next two games, though, the Milwaukee game as well, I think will be Memphis will be the most instructive of the remaining games, but Milwaukee and having Giannis and that type of Zion 4, right? That's I mean, there's not a lot of Zions or Giannis's out there that they need to worry about, but that's the type of guy that they don't really have an answer for, because it's a little too big and strong for Jaden McDaniels to be able to guard. So I think Julius Randle is going to be massive in that Milwaukee game, because I'm anticipating he's going to be the one guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo, and what are they going to be able to do in that game? They have to win that game to be able to. I think if we want to still be talking about 3, 4, 5 seed, they got to beat Milwaukee, and Memphis, who I know fired the coach and all that, but I think we've gotten a little too far with like, oh, they're sinking. This team's completely falling apart. Like, I watched a couple of these Memphis games. They don't look like a bad version of themselves. They look like they're like going through something, but Ja still looks that team to me, when I've watched them, doesn't look like they've lost their belief. So that's two big ones on the road right here. Game 4 and 5 of a road trip as well for this Wolves team. I do think what happens this week is going to really inform belief or a lack of it for this group.
Yeah, you look at Milwaukee's playing for a lot. They're still trying in that race for 4, right? I mean, it's 4, 5, 6 all still at stake. Is this when Bobby Portis comes back?
I don't know, actually.
He has a suspension. It's 25 games. I think it's up, like right about.
So you said he might play on Tuesday.
I
haven't.
Let me just Google it. I mean, he obviously was suspended for 25, and I remember being like, well, he's back for the playoffs.
Well, it's not even the 4. I'm just having it up here now. They got to fight off Detroit for the 6th seed.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, and obviously you don't want to play the Knicks. And yeah, you're right. It's 5 or 6. You'd probably rather play the Pacers than the Pistons.
I guess
Pacers do look good. Yeah, okay. Bobby Portis is back.
So he's playing tomorrow.
The suspension is over. Yep, that was the last game. So I don't know if he's playing tomorrow. I mean, I'm assuming his suspension's done. So I'm assuming he'll play, and that'll they don't have that many good players. So and he is a good player. So that matters a lot. And Memphis, like I went back and watched the Heat game. They are a little lost. You can tell. They don't exactly know what their identity is. There are times where they had Jaw standing in the corner and Bane attacking on the bounce, which I think Minnesota would be like, please do that. But then Scottie Pippen is playing amazing basketball. I think he looks fantastic. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a matchup problem for Minnesota. And then
I know the Giannis thing there too.
Yeah, Memphis went into Detroit. Cade played. Ja didn't. Baines put up 28 points, and like that was a big boy win that they had to have. Like they have, like you said, that belief there, and like they still think they're a good team. And they're going into Memphis, and that game is probably everybody's going to know that game has major significance. So that will feel like a playoff game. And both teams, I think, will give their best shot there. So that'll be one where you learn a lot.
So let's say, like, both teams. I mean, obviously Lillard's not going to play for the Bucks. But say you get a Milwaukee team clearly trying, and the Wolves beat them, and then I agree that Memphis game is going to for sure feel like a playoff game. And if the Wolves beat them, like, how much do you think you can be moved this week?
I don't know, because I don't think Milwaukee and Memphis are as good as the Lakers or like a Houston or even a Golden State. I don't think either of those teams are that good. But if the Wolves beat them convincingly, I think I'll be like, okay, I'll put Minnesota in that class, class of like the Golden State and the Lakers. That, and I'll be like, and then that 50-50, whatever, like we'll see how matchups go. But I think they are as good as those teams. Where if they don't, then I think it'll be a little harder. Now I know the Lakers have some stinkers too sometimes. So
right.
Who's to say? But
so you're kind of the way you're kind of looking at it is maybe
I think Houston is really good.
Yeah,
I really do. I'm probably a bigger believer in Houston, and I think others are probably joining maybe the boat here as
they've been impressive.
Yeah, they handled the Thunder and they handled Golden State in a game Golden State really wanted to win. They're just physical, the game plan, whatever. You can say whatever you want about the last 2-minute offense. Like the Wolves are the same thing.
Right.
And Houston's been a little crisper in the first 40 minutes of games. I really like Houston and the Thunder. And then, the Lakers.
So it's like Lakers and Warriors.
Yeah.
To what you're saying, maybe the Wolves are below that right now, but if they have a good week this week, Milwaukee and Memphis, they're in that, they're that caliber.
In my mind, I just don't know if they are with the Lakers and the Warriors, or if they're with maybe more of like the Clippers, Grizzlies, Nuggets thing, because nothing to base it off of.
Sure.
So I will find out probably one way or the other in those two games, and then we'll have the final two games where you can say I don't mind if you're a Wolves fan and you're like, oh, they could lose to anybody. I'm scared for those 2 weekend games. Like I've seen these teams play. If they are almost like the Nets and the Jazz, if they're almost going to win, like they make adjustments like so that they don't win. I mean, it's insane.
I think that's my personal opinion too. I have like the Lakers and the Warriors in a tier up there that I think the Wolves are like nipping at in there ahead. I would have them ahead of the Denvers and the Clippers, and
it's like an in between.
The Memphises. Right, maybe they're their own sort of tier there. I've really liked Golden State since the trade, and the Lakers. I've seen them look great, and I've seen them look terrible. The most recent thing in my mind is yesterday. I watched them; they look great. So it's they put a little bit. Both of those teams, the Lakers and the Warriors, I think should put in a little bit more fear into the Wolves. When, to your point, we don't know exactly who the Wolves are right now, but I'm not ruling that out. And I understand Houston is playing too, but I actually maybe would put Houston in that same group with the Lakers and Warriors as well too, where picking them maybe in a series against the Wolves, but it's not like the right version of the Wolves can't beat those teams.
Yeah. That's important too. Like I wouldn't, if you said, hey, the Wolves beat the Rockets in 6 games, but okay, I think the Wolves must have played really well, but I definitely see that as a possibility.
There's just like there's so many times. I mean, they're going to enter the playoffs as like a 5, 6, 7, something like that. And how many times are you? When teams are like that, do we ever really have any belief, or are we just like talking ourselves into them?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's the like teams that have 30-plus-year-old stars and they just kind of coasted throughout the regular season, and you're like, well, they could put it together and flip the switch. And the Wolves does it. Yeah, it just
But this year, like the difference, we're literally looking at like a game or two in the
exactly. So that's why they're like the best type of 6 seed. They're the best type of 6 seed, the most confident you could be in a 6 seed going into the playoffs if that's what they're actually going to be. You're still a 6 seed, but I don't know. Whoever they play in the first round, I don't think the betting odds on the series are going to be more than like minus 170 or something like that.
Yeah, I think
it's going to be close to
minus 200.
No matter who it is,
biggest thing you'd see.
Yeah, I would say under minus 200 would be what my guess with that. And then it's like, let's go play. Let's see what this is. Here we go. Jace has been complaining about playing tanking teams. Okay, like this is who you got. Like these and both ways for those teams.
I'm not complaining about this week for the record. Like I'm in Milwaukee and Memphis.
I do Sunday.
Yeah, no, I'll complain about Friday and Sunday. But that's fine. Like the schedule is schedule. I understand that. Yeah, but just trying to learn things like these 2 games will be much more informative. But yeah, I agree with you. The West playoffs are going to be. I know we're going to wrap it up here in a sec, but when you have 8 teams this good, and don't get me wrong, I do think the 8-9, like if Sacramento got into it, like Sacramento just has enough scorers where I would heavily favor the home 8 team there, but like I wouldn't want to play in that game. That game would scare me.
No.
With Sabonis, Monk, Levine, Rosen. There's a lot of guys who could just spoil your season on one night.
And that's the risk they run this week in Milwaukee and Memphis is you fumble one of those and
If you go 0-2, you're probably in the play-in.
Yeah, I mean, likely.
And they do have enough tiebreaker advantages. Who knows how it shakes out? But yeah, I think you're probably in the play-in if you go 0-2 in these games.
What's the title of that article? Just if I have people look at it, I mean,
okay.
It's on your Twitter.
Yeah, I pinned it, but yeah, it's Can Timberwolves avoid play-in tournament? A guide to Minnesota's playoff prospects. And I do update it every day with all the tankathon stuff of remaining strength of schedule and all the tiebreaker stuff and the standings. And then
all
every
the
time
stuff
I see a new Vegas odds on anything of like, I'll start putting in the who are they going to play, and then are they going to be in the play-in? What are the odds of missing the playoffs? All that stuff.
It's really helpful if like start looking at the tiebreakers. I'm like, I don't even know what division winner. I'm like, I don't even know how this stuff works. So that's all laid out in there. You guys can look at that later today once this publishes. I'm sure Jace will have this episode publishes. Jace will update that. But all throughout the week, if you're like, wait a minute, there's 6 teams tied here. What does that even mean? Jace will have that all updated there. That's at twincities.com. And obviously all the rest of Jace's Wolves writing is there as well. Appreciate you doing it, man. Well, I guess next episode it'll be after that Utah game.
Here we go.
I don't know if it'll be playoff. Well, we'll have a better idea of where they're going to be playing here, but it's crazy. It's over, man. It's one more week and the regular season is over. As you know, this goes by very slow and fast, I guess, at the same time.
Yeah,
but
not great.
Appreciate you doing it. You guys can follow Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. That's where you'll find that article. Super helpful. And all the stuff at twincities.com. The plan next for the show is Britt and I are going to do an episode on Wednesday morning after the Wolves-Bucks game, our first sort of tell of what this week is going to look like. So, that's coming up next. Until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.